overall project of the white man, which is a global project, it has been a global project for over 500 years,
yes, sir,
is the unmanning of the black male. Yes. He has systematically unmanned the black male everywhere he has gone.
Well, I like the term, but as the elder, I get a little provocative.
Yes, you
He
do.
has ungod the black man.
That is, I salute
he has
that.
ungod the black man.
I asked a question in a lecture. How do you make God gay? You know, just let that marinate. It's an offensive question, right? But think about it. Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, wherever you look at a black man, you're seeing God. We spent these last 20 minutes talking about black homosexuals. So somebody made God gay. How do you make God gay? There's only one way to do it. Make God not God.
That's right.
By making God not God, you can make him gay. And God is a being of power and force. Once you disempower the black man, and that's what white supremacy did, and has been the objective for white supremacy globally, disempowering the black male. By man, I'm not just talking euphemistically about man and woman, specifically disempowering the black male in the home and in society. That's what made God non-God and set the path or set the course to making him gay. But the unmanning takes place even before you get to homosexuality. Even if you don't get to homosexuality, an unman, a black male in his home who has no authority because he's living in his wife's house, because he has to get an allowance, he has to ask his wife for money because she's the breadwinner and not him. So he has no authority in his home. That's an unmanned black man. And because he's unmanned, because he cannot provide for her, she may love him, but she can't respect him. And so there's disorder in the home. That's deliberately done.
Oh, agree 100%.
That's part of the assault. And my point is that needs as much attention as homosexuality. All of the ways in which the black male is unmanned, socially, economically, culturally, intellectually, as well as sexually. All of those aspects are part of the assault that we uncover and document in the book.
And Baba, may I just one? You mentioned hypersexuality earlier.
Yes.
Now, having you here, Dr. Muhammad, is a great teaching tool for a viewer right now that's trying to determine, because what is a healthy libido? What is working within the realm of healthy sexuality? And when do you cross that line to become a hypersexualized individual? Is it volume? Is it activity? Is it nature? What makes you hypersexual from your research?
Sexuality is divine. You know, we Muslims. We ain't Catholics. We Muslims. we don't do the Catholicism in Islam. Because sexuality, sex is divine. Sex is the way God reproduces himself. Hypersexuality is sex with no discipline. Hypersexuality is sex as a spawn of impulse. Impulsive sexuality. And this is how they produced hypersexuality, by assaulting the biochemical that controls our impulses. The police, the biochemical police of our impulses is serotonin, the brain chemical. I document how they deliberately assaulted the serotonergic or serotonin system of black boys in particular, and this produced hyper-aggressiveness and hypersexuality because it made us slaves of our impulses. High serotonin levels is necessary to be in control of our impulses, our natural drive. When you lower serotonin levels, then we become slaves to our impulses, sexual, dietary, otherwise. That's why obesity runs wild in the black community. Impulsive violence, not strategic violence, impulsive violence and aggression. You looked at my woman wrong, so I'm gonna literally kill you. That's that impulsive violence. Impulsive sexuality, we'll throw it in anything that will spread her legs with no consideration of responsibility, no consideration of duty. That's hypersexuality. It's irresponsible sexuality. Sexuality is of God. Irresponsible weaponized sexuality is of Satan, the white man.
So the last part of that, the impulsiveness is what identifies. So it's not promiscuity, it's not multiple partners. It's just, now let's say you're in a monogamous relationship that you have impulsive sex in. Are you still considered to be a hypersexual person if you have one partner and you and your partner just decide to impulsively have sex? Is that still classified as hypersexual?
Well, no, that's not what I'm talking about. You know, terms such as promiscuity, you know, those are, you have to define that in cultural context. Because what's promiscuous in this cultural context is polygyny in this cultural context.
True.
So I'm not talking about socially loaded constructs. Nor am I talking about a monogamous or polygynous family that has a high libido, has a lot of healthy sex. See, a married couple who has a lot of sex, you know, that's healthy. Whether they have it once a week or 100 times a week, if it's consensual and they're responsible with it, praise belongs to Allah. Well, we're talking about the impulsive hypersexuality. Is that sexuality that is totally unrestricted by cognitive thinking. We will run up in anything, even without, in 2017, where the face of AIDS is no longer white. It's not even homosexual, black homosexual. Whereas it is the case that black homosexuals are a bigger piece of the AIDS pie than disproportionate to their numbers than whites. But black heterosexuals, male and female, in certain states are the face of AIDS. Yet hypersexuality is us who, despite that, we can't stop from running up in women, running up in groupies with no condom. Why? Because it's impulsive. So that the impulsive hypersexuality is that sexuality that can't be controlled by our cognitive process, just like obesity. When we are victims of our food diet, even though we know that this thing we're participating in may kill us, we're obese. Our obesity is a threat to our health, but we continue consuming, even though we know intellectually we shouldn't be doing it. But our mind is not the rider of our appetite. That's when it's impulsive. In a married couple that just has a high libido, that their high libido doesn't mean that they are having sex because their mind isn't riding their sex drive. They're consensual adults married. They just like to enjoy each other like that. That's very different from the impulsive hypersexuality, like the impulsive hyper-aggressiveness is engaging, surrendering to these appetites and drives unable to control them by our cognitive process, our thinking.
Thank you. That made total sense, and I'm sure the viewers got a lot of knowledge from that. Thank you, Dr. Muhammad.
Let me ask you, what is the proof of your research? Because you know the people don't just take things on face value anymore. You said you had confessions. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. Ronald's, well, you speaking specifically of the crack confessions, because a whole book,
yes,
I can subtitle it The Confessions.
Right, that's what I'm talking about.
Specifically regarding crack cocaine.
Right, that's
Ronald Siegel. Ronald Siegel is the Johnny Appleseed of crack cocaine. Ronald Siegel confessed in courts of law and on radio to having been the first one to, in his words, discover crack cocaine 13 years before the world knew what a crack cocaine was. He confessed to having trained monkeys in the basement laboratory of UCLA, trained them how to smoke crack cocaine 13 years before our people in South Central Los Angeles knew anything about crack cocaine. Even powdered cocaine, because it was too expensive for them. We were still tripping on heroin and marijuana. Ronald Siegel is important because Ronald Siegel, the Johnny Appleseed of crack cocaine by his own confession, he's a protege of a very important devil, Dr. Lewis Jolyon West, or Dr. Jolly West, who was the Lord of UCLA neuroscience and psychiatry. Ronald Siegel was his protege. Dr. Jolly West's biggest claim to fame is he was an official, what they call CIA doctor. The CIA doctors were the doctors who weren't in the direct employ of the CIA, but were funded by the CIA to do civilian research on behalf of the CIA. Dr. Jolly West did most of his career, he did research on behalf of the CIA. His research targeted black men. Dr. Jolly West was the first white scientist who infiltrated the sit-ins of the 60s. He was an observer, participant in the sit-ins. His purpose was to discover the cause of the psychology behind Negro revolt. Follow me. Allow me to elaborate. This is critical to everything we're saying. This CIA Dr. Jolly West, the mentor of Ronald Siegel, the Johnny Appleseed of crack cocaine, Jolly West in the early 60s was the first. He planted himself in the civil rights sit-in movements to understand and formulate protocols for the Negro Revolt. When the Negro Revolt at that time was sit-ins and protests. But in 1975, something happened. It changed the world for Jolly West and for black people consequently. In 1965, Watts blew up. Urban black males in particular got violent in their revolt. And then in 1967, Detroit blew up. And then in 1968, after Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, 100 cities blew up. Dr. Jolly West, the CIA, and this government automatically, public enemy #1 was an inner city black mayor. And they formed, this was the new revolt now. It went from the Negro revolt with sit-ins and protests to the inner city revolt with violent uprisings. So the CIA formulated plans to neutralize the inner city black male. The violence initiative, we got all of the documents. Dr. Jolly West, the CIA doctor, did the research for the CIA on how to neutralize the mind of the inner city black male, because they had determined that they rose up in watch Detroit and the 100 other cities, not because of social and economic deprivation. They rose up because they had a mental deformity. And so the solution to black males rising up violently was to mind fix them through psychosurgery, physically assaulting their brain tissue, or by chemical psychosurgery, by assaulting their mind, by taming their mind through chemicals. Dr. Jolly West was the primary CIA doctor commissioned he got MK Ultra dollars to do this research targeting inner city black boys, taming, mind fixing them. His protege, Ronald Siegel, comes up with crack cocaine, which was the first chemical ice pick, because you remember the lobotomies?
Lobotomy.
The brain surgeries, they use an ice pick. They literally stuck an ice pick through the eye sockets to damage tissue. This was what was proposed initially for inner city black boys. But then they got more sophisticated. Crack cocaine was the first chemical ice pick that was tried. Ronald Siegel, the student of CIA Dr. Jolly West, is the one who did that initial research with crack cocaine, and then 13 years later it was released in South Central Los Angeles. It moved, you know how and when it came to New York? It was dumped. The CIA doctors dumped crack cocaine in South Central Los Angeles in 1981, 1982. It was an epicenter, and it was confined there until 1985. But then the Honorable Mr. Louis Farrakhan spoke at the LA Forum in 1985 and drew thousands. The controversy was enormous. When he went from the LA Forum to Madison Square Gardens, power at last forever.
I saw him.
There was a huge controversy. Everybody, all of the officials in New York did everything they could to shut Farrakhan down and disconnect what was looking like this magnetic connection between Louis Farrakhan and black youth. He came, despite their protests and their conniving, he came to Madison Square Garden, 25,000 inside, 25,000 outside. Young brothers. They came with guns because we lived guns that the government gave us. But when they found out they couldn't bring the guns in, they dropped them. That was a sign to our enemies. It was 3 weeks later, 3 weeks after Power at Last Forever at Madison Square Gardens, where crack cocaine is first reported in New York. Crack cocaine was to be the chemical ice pick to neutralize the inner city black male that will rise up.
To what? To neutralize that?
To neutralize. To mind fix the black male who will rise up against white authority. And Farrakhan showed that he's the magnet for those young black men who will be galvanized to rise up. And that's why when after the Madison Square Garden demonstration, they migrated the crack apocalypse. It was silent in South Central Los Angeles from 1981 to 1985. It was reported because it was licit, it was permitted. South Central Los Angeles was quarantined as the experimental zone. But the demonstration at Madison Square Gardens by the Honorable Mr. Louis Farrakhan, the evidence that he was the one around whom inner city black males could gravitate and get inspired to rise up. 3 weeks later, they migrated crack cocaine from South Central Los Angeles to New York. I document all of the confessions. Can I see? Yeah. See, though you know how I do. I do footnotes and bibliography. So everything that we say is documented. We give the footprints for you to follow. But we got Ronald Siegel's audio confession, and we have his confessions in court of law where he an expert testimony, an expert witness in cases, and during those testimonies he confesses. But he wasn't, his mind confessing, he was bragging about having trained monkeys to smoke crack cocaine 13 years before the world knew what crack cocaine was.
But
right. Now, hold up. I got a follow up. Professor Smalls, you want to go before I follow up?
No. Go ahead.
Okay, so you said white supremacy was behind this. What do you mean by that?
Yes, and that's important.
Right.
I was thinking when Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, may Allah be pleased with her, she educated all of us on whites' fear of genetic annihilation. In the American context, the same circle of UCLA scientists who was behind ultimately the crack holocaust. Those same scientists during the same period in the 80s innovated or contributed to and advanced what's called dominance hierarchy studies. For black folks, everything is about rights. Well, let me say, for the Negro, everything is about rights. Civil rights, human rights, all of this. But for the white man, everything is about power. And the dominance hierarchy studies were the scientific studies on dominant male groups and subordinate non-dominant male groups. They scientifically study what makes dominant males dominant. Is there something about them? And they discovered that there's a biochemical profile for a dominant male, a biochemical profile that inclines one to a certain set of behaviors that facilitates dominance. They discovered that there's a biochemical profile of non-dominant males. Non-dominant males have a different biochemical, not genetic, have a different biochemical profile than dominant males. And the biochemical profile of subordinate non-dominant males, that profile inclines them to a certain set of behaviors that perpetuates their continued non-dominance. They, Brother Sanetta, they deployed, or they came up with protocols on how to keep dominant males dominant and subordinate males subordinate. I say all this to your question. All of the assault is about power. It's about power. We want sex, we want this, we want rights, we want fame, we want everything but power. The white man is willing to give us sex, give us guns, give us rights, give us all that, but not power. White supremacy, globally and locally, is about power. So the whole point of the assault, he will continue giving us rights. He'll make us agitate for a little bit, so that when he finally gives it to us, we feel like it was a victory.
Right.
That's his hustle.
Right.
He will give us everything that we ask for eventually, because he knows the one thing we need, we won't demand it: power. So all of this is about maintaining the current dominance hierarchy. All of this is about keeping white males as the dominant male group and black males as the subordinate male group. White males as the alpha male of America, and the black man as the epsilon male of black America. Alpha being the first letter of the Greek alphabet. Dominance hierarchy studies categorize the different levels of male dominance. The highest level, the dominant male, is that alpha male. Then you got beta males, you got gamma males, you got delta males, all down the hierarchy. And the lowest, the most non-dominant, the epsilon male. That's the so-called Negro in America. And so everything that they do is to protect that dominance hierarchy, to keep white males alpha and black males epsilon.
You also mentioned that science is behind this. You mentioned that chemicals are feminizing the black man, and that chemicals are also emasculating the black woman. Can you please explain that?
Masculinizing.
Masculinizing,
absolutely.
Right. Masculinizing.
The black community is under what I call an estrogen assault. All the gun clapping in the black community, that's actually not a manifestation of hyper-masculinity. Or the gun clapping in the black community is a manifestation of the feminization of the black community. We clap guns because ain't nobody fighting anymore.
That's true.
Right.
Because niggas scared to fight.
Exactly.
Niggas scared to fight. And niggas can't fight. But it's easy to shoot. Any nigga can pull a trigger from a distance. We don't know how to shoot, so that's why we kill all these babies. Most of the babies, you know, the shooter, we later bawling in tears because it wasn't his intended target. Nigga just can't shoot. And he's gonna be at a distance because he's afraid to fight. All of the gun clapping is evidence of the feminization of the black community. And it's evidence of the estrogen assault on the black community. What do I mean by the estrogen assault? Estrogen, of course, is a female hormone.
Yes.
Testosterone,
male.
the male hormone. Testosterone isn't a libido hormone. White folks trivialize that, make it a sex hormone when they know that testosterone is a power hormone. It's a dominance hormone. It's only secondarily related to libido and sex drive. It's primarily related to the drive for power. High testosterone inclines toward a drive, it feeds a drive for power in males. All men have estrogen in us. It's a balance, but it's minimal. Just like all women have some testosterone, but it's minimal. The black community is under an estrogen assault. How? The alcohol and the weed. 3 primary culprits. Weed, alcohol, and a birth control pill. Weed, alcohol, birth control pill. The primary culprits, or among the 3 primary culprits of the feminization of black men and the masculinization of black women. Now there are other chemicals involved. There's other science involved, especially with regard to the feminization of black men. We can talk about phthalates. We can talk about atrazine. But weed and alcohol, marijuana, loud, 2017 herb, I don't care what you call it. Weed and alcohol are the number one chemical feminizers of black men. Why?
That's heavy there.
It is a fact that we have documented. The THC chemical in marijuana, the chemical that gets you high, which is what you want, which it ain't holy if you taking a herb to get high. And originally, natural cannabis on average, or marijuana on average, has a THC content of less than 1%. The marijuana that's being loud, the marijuana being smoked on the street today has a THC content of anywhere from 10 to 20%. Why was it, and I document how it was deliberately, the THC content in marijuana was deliberately increased. Why was it deliberately increased? Because THC assaults the testosterone of males. THC castrates, chemically castrates in two ways. It castrates the black man's mind, and it castrates the black man's his higher potency and his lower potency. Because THC not only lowers existing testosterone levels, it inhibits the production of testosterone. So black men have lowered testosterone. That's why there is no drive for power. That's why we happy with not real money, but crummy money. We're happy with fame. We're happy with rights. We're happy with this. And we have no desire for power because our testosterone system is lower. Now, normally when you see when you see a nigga lighting up, he's also throwing something back too. Got the weed in one hand and a bottle in the other. That's a double assault on your masculinity, because while that THC in the joint you smoking is lowering your testosterone level, the alcohol, we now know, alcohol exaggerates the natural long-term use of alcohol. Artificially stimulates a natural process in a man's body. That natural process is aromatization. All men, like I said, all men have a natural amount of estrogen in us, a female hormone. The estrogen that we have is metabolized from or produced from testosterone. Some of our testosterone converts to estrogen naturally. That's the source of the natural amount, small amount of estrogen that men have. That process of converting some testosterone to estrogen is a process called aromatization, because it's facilitated by an enzyme called aromatase. I hope I didn't lose.
No, I'm rolling.
What long-term use of alcohol does, what chronic use of alcohol does, is artificially stimulate the process of aromatization. So instead of leaving be at the natural amount of estrogen in the body, alcohol use stimulates it artificially, puts it in overdrive, so it builds excess estrogen in the man's body. This is why chronic alcohol users, if you ask them to get naked, I'm not saying you should, but if you ask them to get naked, there's two things you will likely discover in many chronic alcohol abusers. Man boobs are small testicles.
Interesting, interesting. Dr. Muhammad, if I may bring you back to the question of power again, in that with lack of testosterone levels, the alpha male, one, doesn't seek, or doesn't become an alpha male, doesn't seek power. Now, you clearly are following the legacy of a lot of the men that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad has set on the path of knowledge, wisdom, in Malcolm X, in the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. Now, with the documented information and the confessions, like you said, even stated in the courts of law, does this evidence rise to the point where this can be taken to a world court? Do we now have solid evidence of implicit genocide being committed on us? And then could we now seek power by clearly showing that this man has been moving in all ungodly ways to suppress our people?
Unequivocally, yes. That's the point of the book. The Honorable Brother Minister Louis Farrakhan, in fact, stated to the world that he's sending that book with its evidences to President Donald Trump and Attorney General Sessions. He's sending the book to the White House for them to study before they pursue the course that Donald Trump has been threatening to roll up in Chicago. Because what we document irrefutably, which will stand up in the world court, we're taking it to that's why we're sending it to the White House, bringing it to their attention. We're making this a matter of global consciousness. Because we document the origin of the inner city carnage. It wasn't self-created. The government, Donald Trump, Donald Trump he's never been a politician. So he never had the privilege of sitting in the briefings, either on the state or federal level. So there's things he just don't know. He doesn't know that the government that he is now CEO of deliberately, scientifically created the carnage in Chicago, in Detroit, and elsewhere that he now is threatening black people with federal troops. So the minister said he's going to send the book with this documentation to the White House for them to study before they decide to move on our people in Chicago. So unequivocally, yes, we are prepared. We have the documentation to take the case to the world court, to Congress, to the White House, to Switzerland, the world court. We are prepared to take the case. But I want to put the footnote on that. Because weed and alcohol. Yes. And then we get to the birth control pill, the masculinization of the black woman. Weed and alcohol are the two greatest assaulters of black male masculinity. That weed reduces testosterone, that alcohol increases estrogen. That's why black men are so doggone emotional and impulsive. That's part of the feminization. Black women, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad told us that the birth control pill was genocide. He said that the birth control pill was designed to keep the black family. It was an assault on the black family. Now we know why. Not just because, you can't get pregnant, but the birth control pill masculinizes women. How does a birth control pill masculinize women? Most birth control pills have high levels of estrogen in them. What they learned was, while excess estrogen feminizes men, excess estrogen masculinizes women. Women have their set amount of estrogen levels. Excess estrogen doesn't make them excessively feminine, except in the sense that, you know, and the metaphor, the man traveled so far north, he ended up south. Excess estrogen masculinizes women, subtly, but definitely. And so you have all of these hardened women, because birth control pills are peddled first in the city. And so black women are consuming all of this excess estrogen. And it's masculinizing our women. It's a fact. Our women are harder and colder, and it's not just the burden of having had to wear 2 hats for so long. You know, mama and daddy, that has contributed, no doubt. But a lot of the masculinization that we witness among our sisters is as chemically induced as is a lot of the feminization in the black men. And so both of these, this is an estrogen, these are 3 examples of the estrogen assault on the black men.